Hello everyone, I'm Entom64.
I'm the Flameflower.
And I am Richie.
And welcome to the HellfireComms playthrough of Sonic Rush for the Nintendo DS. What could be finer for the Christmas season than the gift of going fast? And indeed, this was the Sonic game that basically popularized the boost formula, brought it into existence, and they basically never stopped using it. So, controversial opinion, this is where modern Sonic started for me.
It's got the same sort of design as the modern boost games, although I would say that this one, it's got kind of a different feel to it to the 3D boost games. So I feel like it's maybe like the foundation for that kind of gameplay, but I wouldn't say it's like, you know, it's not like the formula that they would then go on to do over and over, and what they're probably going to do for the next boost game when it comes out.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this was released in 2005, same year as Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic Gems Collection, stuff like that. And it quickly became one of my favourites because while it has none of the momentum-based platforming, the classics rave about, it is a very fun game in its own right. What you'll see on the left there is the tension gauge, and by doing tricks, beating enemies, and I think collecting rings, you'll fill that up and you can go lickety-split super fast and whatnot. But Richie, while we get this Chaos Emerald, what's your experience with Sonic Rush, mate?
I have had absolutely no experience of Sonic Rush other than knowing that it's a Sonic game that came out on the DS and that it's where Blaze came from, and everybody really likes Blaze. So they were really excited when she came in Sonic 06, and then everyone went, "Oh, why did you do that?" So I really have very little knowledge of much to do with Sonic Rush, other than I know that it does have an absolutely banging soundtrack filled with, it's a bunch of sampled music, but it works really effectively, and there are some absolute gems throughout both Rush and Rush Adventure from what I know of the soundtracks.
I guess that's a good enough transition point. Flame, do you want to talk about the music and who composed it?
Yes, the music for this game was composed by the funky uncle himself, Hideki Naganuma, he of Jet Set Radio fame. This is probably my favourite of his soundtracks that I've heard, because I will say I never grew up with Jet Set Radio like a lot of people did, so I don't have that in memory, but this soundtrack is fantastic. He didn't actually do the Rush Adventure soundtrack, despite a common misconception I heard, because for Rush Adventure they kind of got Tomoyo Otani in to do Naganuma's thing, but the main direction behind the music here is Naganuma is famous for working with samples, and that's where a lot of the more catchy melodic parts of the songs come from. The song during the special stage there, A New Day, I think one of the more fascinating things about that is the vocal, It's a New Day part. That's a male vocal that was pitched up, and that's something I didn't realise until quite a bit later, and it sort of blew me mind when I heard the original sample that he was using.
Huh. Well, anywho, we usually start with a greenery sort of zone, so we have this sucker here. I wouldn't say it's the most memorable start to a Sonic game ever, but, for a new style, you have to go over a little bit of the familiar so you don't alienate the core fan base, and it does its job for the most part. You'll notice a lot of downward slopes, a lot of straightaways. That is so the boost formula doesn't just fall flat on its face immediately.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, one of the other things that was a major thing to do with Sonic Rush was the fact that it does actually take place across the two screens, making really sort of, I suppose, strong use of the DS dual screen setup. Obviously, from how you've edited it, Flame, you're basically switching between the screens when the switch occurs, but if you're actually playing the game as it is, then you are actually going to see Sonic basically appear on both screens, and I do think that is a really cool use of the platform. Whether obviously it's as player friendly as it perhaps could be is a different kettle of fish, but as an idea for, I suppose, relatively early DS, it's pretty awesome.
See, the whole DS setup here, like, I know it's one of the more contentious things, you know, Sonic jumping between the two screens and that. What I do feel it helps with, not so much for this level, because this is like just the basic big screen hill climb, but for later levels it did give them a bit of flexibility to be more vertical in their level design. And we'll see that particularly like when we get to altitude limit and levels like that. But it does, like, I will say this is a lot easier to follow on the DS itself than you might think, because it's Sonic jumps between the screens in logical positions for him to jump between the screens, and I feel like it does play pretty smoothly.
Wow. You notice the difference, well, the contrast in commentary insight between Rivals and this? There's a lot more to talk about with this. I think the DS won that particular console war in terms of Sonic and whatnot.
Well, I mean, it won it in general, let's be fair. But yeah, like, the DS did get the better Sonic games for the most part. Like, obviously, when we did our Chronicles run, that was a bit more contentious between the three of us, but you got Rush Adventure, you got the Olympic Games adaptation, so yeah, I think the DS definitely got the better deal here.
Yeah, it got the best, and it got the worst.
Agree to disagree there, but yeah. So yeah, this game's story, I will say, this is one of the weaker parts for me, not because of the story itself, but the delivery. The characters are going to be spending a lot of time text boxing each other, and I will say, there are certain cutscenes through this where my brain just turns off and I'm just pressing A at that point, because like these cutscenes, 4 text box cutscenes, they go on a bit, like particularly the later ones when more characters start showing up.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not fun. I think it's one of those things of you've got to have a very specific type of game to succeed with text box cutscenes. A fast-paced platformer is not one of the ones where it's gonna go down phenomenally well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is like the whole division, like you're boosting really fast, then it's just read text for a while. But there's also the fact of like the length of the cutscenes, like the advanced games. I remember Advanced 2, like it would do the same thing where it'd just be characters text boxing each other like on screen under the cutscene portraits. But there would both be unique portraits for a lot of those cutscenes, and also there'd be like 3 or 4 screens each. Whereas these, it feels like they just go on forever. And speaking of going on forever, here's one of this game's bosses, which in terms of gameplay I think is the weaker part. Because a lot of these bosses are very similar, and they're probably my least favourite kind of boss, where it's a cycle-based thing, where you have to wait for him to do a certain thing before you can get a hit in.
Yeah, no, that's never fun.
Which, when you contrast that with, say, the Mega Drive games bosses, for the most part, they were pretty good of, like, there's an easy way to hit him, and also a way that you can tank a hit and hit him. There's no way to do this quickly. There's no way that you can, like, just like skim past the intended approach and then just take him down. Like, no, you have to wait for him to do his very specific maneuver.
Yeah, you can't outwit these bosses, you just have to go with the flow, really.
Yeah, it doesn't help, I will say, that for the sake of the playthrough, I am playing this on normal difficulty. There is an easy difficulty you can turn on in the options, which is essentially the same game, except the bosses take a few less hits. That's pretty much the only difference. So if you're just playing this casually and you get bored of these fights, then I would recommend doing that.
That's fair, but yeah, it's just not fun when fights take sort of far longer than they feel like they need to.
Oh.
New character time, here's Blaze.
Huh. That looks strikingly similar to the old versions of the Chaos Emeralds, which were a completely different cut to the more modern ones.
Although, to be fair, I think the Chaos Emeralds have actually changed their look a fair few times, haven't they, since the first game? And the fact that there's another one of them appeared, technically 2 more if you're thinking about like the heroes' oversights and whatnot. But
Flame, you're hurting my head, mate. Oh Jesus, too much information. The ranking system is new to the game, by the way. Is A the highest rank you can get?
I honestly can't remember if I got any A's or S's or whatever, so, you know, we'll see. Like, I will say, for the sake of this playthrough, I've mostly been aiming for clean runs more so than, like, S-rank runs, because that's how I usually play these for playthroughs, but,
Fair enough,
you know, I've never really been one for caring about score.
Yes, if this random page that I have found is accurate, then it's C at the lowest all the way up to S. And it's pretty much, it's pretty much consistent in terms of the scores that you need to get, I think, from the looks of things. So for an S rank, you need to get over 100,000 points in a regular act. A C rank is anything less than 50,000. And then, you in betweens. For bosses, you've got to get over 50,000 points for an S rank, and it's roughly anything less than 30,000 for a C rank. So it's about that. Well, how accurate that is, I don't know.
Yeah, well, here we have Water Palace. This was the level that was brought back in Sonic Generations for the 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
I like that game a fair bit, actually, although it is one of them games that really suffers from being the obviously lower budget, like, faster development time version of a game that is fantastic.
Yeah, that's true. And to be honest, I think we'll do a Generations playthrough redo. So whenever they get off their arse and announce the 30th anniversary game or whatever, the project at least, I think we'll have to revisit both the console and handheld versions.
Yeah, I'll be down for recording that. But for this particular level, we have the song Back to Back, which is one of the most well-known songs from this particular soundtrack. This has a handful of samples like mixed in, but the one that's like the main chorus, the spinning on the turntables back to back, that's from a song called The Haunted House of Rock by the group Houdini. It's actually a fantastic, very cheesy rap song that I actually love a lot.
Well, there we go then. And like Flame said, this came back in Generations 3DS. Honestly, if there was any level I would have to pick to represent Rush, this would probably be it, because it looks great, music's a lot of fun, and the level design just really encourages you to go as fast as possible while still maintaining a little bit of danger and whatnot. There's the classic Dimps bottomless pits dotted throughout these levels, especially later on, so you have to use your best judgment of when to boost, but for the most part you can hold down that button and just go to town, really.
Yeah, it's one of the... I've been replaying this since recording this live the last few days just to get another feel for it, fresh in my mind, and I did forget just how much this game has a just keep going no matter what feel to it, because obviously I got the no-hit run down here for the playthrough, but god, I was just getting twatted by everything, and just as long as I could keep on boosting afterwards, it didn't actually matter.
No.
But that is kind of the gameplay style here, and the other little facet of the gameplay is, as you see when I'm doing jumps here and when I'm on the grind rails, there is a trick system in this game, which when you're in mid-air you can press the B button, or if you're on a rail you can press the R button to do tricks, and that helps fill up your boost gauge, which is something else that you'll need to keep an eye on, particularly if you're going for the special stages. Because we saw the last couple of the special rings that I went into, you do need to have about a bar and a half's worth of boost to be able to get into them. So if you are going for the Chaos Emeralds, that's something to bear in mind. And I will say, if you're going for the good ending of the game, for the proper last story, you will need to do that.
Yeah, that's how they typically tend to handle last story in these modern Sonic games. No playable Super Sonic outside of the final boss. Not really a big spoiler, you know how these modern Sonic games deal with Super Sonic.
Yeah, I have a feeling that these games will these level designs will completely fall apart if you had Super Sonic back. Let's be real, if you got what's already a really fast gameplay style, and then you got Super Sonic who can just do one dash and boost over the entire stage, I think that might be kind of broken there.
Yeah, I mean the thing is on the whole, Super Sonic playable and levels, I suppose maybe it's because I never played the original, so I don't have that same connection to that, but it's never really bothered me. Like, obviously, it's a cool extra when you can do it, but having it just be in sort of those final moments, or I suppose something that you can win as an optional extra after you've beaten the entire game, it's just sort of a fun thing that makes it feel a bit more special, I suppose. But as I said, I think part of that is just I don't have that connection to Supersonic so much. And ooh, it looks like Eggman, but that's not Eggman.
No, it is not. And I sense he has a completely different backstory to when we saw him in Sonic Rivals. What the fuck is wrong with you, Sega? Why can't you keep things consistent across your fucking games? It's a game about a fucking blue hedgehog, for God's sake.
Yeah, but you see, this is from a different timeline, so it's a different iteration of him.
Oh, piss off. I'm not playing Sonic Endgame here.
Okay, but I fucking love this shit. The more batshit, like, bullshit they put into the game, like, I'm down for that. Fuck it.
You should play Kingdom Hearts then, mate. It'll supply you with all the batshit bullshit that you need.
Oh, but then I'd have to play with the spin-offs to understand it, right?
Oh, you know what you're doing to try and trigger me, mate. No, not falling for it.
I played the first one and I didn't care for it that much, so no, I don't care.
You monster.
Well, whatever. We got Tails dancing up a storm on what I would assume is the bottom screen there, while we're tackling Nessie or whatever on the top screen.
Okay, you say that's what Tails looks like he's doing there, but I distinctly remember one comment that Helldragon left in the stream chat once, pointing out that it looks like he's jerking off invisible dicks, and I can't unsee that.
Helldragon is a bit of an enigma at times. I've never been able to piece together how he formulates thoughts.
But I mean, look at the screen right now, he's right.
Unfortunately, yes.
Look, Sonic, it's a twofer, just like my Tails.
Now I just need 2 more arms and then I can help Knuckles out.
Oh god, yeah, we're starting strong with this playthrough, guys.
I mean, it's a Sonic Rush boss, let me do whatever I can to get through this.
Fair enough, mate, fair enough. Oh god, no, don't do that, don't copy Tails, just talk about whatever.
Oh, good God. It has been far too long.
Yes, indeed, indeed. I gotta say, the 3D models in the game are really good for the time this game came out.
They really are.
The art style in general looks great, because this game, for the bosses, it is basically entirely 3D. For the levels, there's a mixture of 3D models and sprites, and I'll say this game does a lot better of a job disguising that than fucking Colours DS ever would. Because that's where it's most obvious that they're just shoehorning sprites in places.
Couple more and he's down.
I suppose that sort of goes to one of those whole things of Rush was its own thing, so they probably spent a bit more time worrying about it, whereas Colours were just like, oh, it's the DS version, it'll be fine, nobody will care.
Yeah, Colours DS also handled by Dims. Dims kind of came across as, we need a game, go ahead and do it. We'll handle the console stuff and take all the credit, really.
Basically.
Yeah, you better run.
Why does he have a weird glow around him there?
I don't know, Flame, just take your rankings glory and we'll see you next time for part 2 of Sonic Rush.
Should we try this again? Right there. Right there. Right there.